Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar will be about building a library of reusable actions for fast and powerful animations presented by McCoy Buck. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. There will be a Q&A session in the last 15 minutes. You can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box. Also, we'll try to select most of your questions due to the limitations of our time. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so please subscribe to get a notification. You will also receive an email when the webinar is ready to watch. The panelists for this webinar are Maria Quiñones, myself, Victor Paredes, and McCoy Buck. Also, we encourage you to share your Instagram stories tagging us as #webinar at Moho Animation at McCoy_Buck. And yeah, we'll try to share all of your stories. Currently, McCoy Buck works as a full-time 3D animator, instruction designer, and part-time 2D animator and Moho Instructor. He's had an opportunity to work with a lot of great people on projects using Moho, and in his spare time, he loves to work on his personal Moho projects. In 2014, McCoy started a YouTube channel creating tutorials for Moho. Since then, he's mentioned and taught hundreds of Moho users, mentored and taught hundreds of Moho users, whether they are just starting out in animation or have a professional animation background and are getting started in Moho for the first time. So with that, I will leave you with McCoy and his presentation, building a library of reusable actions for fast and powerful animations. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much, Mario. Can you see my screen okay and hear me okay? Oh, let's see here. Let me show my screen. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And yeah, before I get started, I just want to say thank you to the Moho team for inviting me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I've been using Moho since Anime Studio, or I've been using Anime Studio since Anime Studio 9. It's now Moho, but I think I've gone back and watched every single webinar that Moho's created, probably religiously multiple times, and it's a privilege to be here to be a presenter. Okay, so the title of the webinar is Building a Library of Reusable Actions. So as far as this presentation goes, what I hope that you'll be able to get by the end of it is you'll know what an action is, how to make an action, when to use an action, and why to use an action. And all the while we'll be starting to build a library of our actions. Okay, so I have a few examples here that I want to show with actions. So this is one that's playing out that has an action. So I'll just define what that is as I'm just kind of cycling through these examples. So an action is basically like a pre-built animation that you created, and it can be saved, that you created and saved to be reused. You can modify it, and it can also be imported and exported to use in other projects. So here's a few examples of some actions here. I have these guys, they're walking up to throw the baseball. They then throw the baseball, and you can see here and down the timeline, I have it kind of marked out what's going on. And they just have their different actions. And with actions, because it's an animation that you save, you could easily put it back into your main timeline, and it makes for really fast and powerful animations, just like the title says. And so a few other examples that I have here is I have this caveman character here. He's running, and this run is this run cycle is an action that I animated before I saved, and I imported it into this main timeline. And then as you can see there, he's riding on his tablet and then he walks off. A good example of where you could use an action to save time is for this run cycle, for him to run and then slow down to walk. It actually took a little while to animate that to get that right. And what you could do is you could take and you can save those keyframes for that action where he's slowing down, and you could save that into an action. So again, just think of like just ways you could start saving time. Another way that I used an action here was in a lip sync, and hopefully I'll be able to, by the end of the tutorial, sorry, I'm used to speaking YouTube tutorials. By the end of this presentation, I'll be able to explain how I use, or why I would use a lip sync for an action.
Ooh, I kind of already got 2 tickets for Pajama Sisters 2.
Okay, so this is Mordecai from regular show, and that's all the audio and everything from the show. I just reanimated it. I wanted to see if I could create a Cartoon Network type of scene in Moho, and yeah, I think so. I think it came out pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this example here of these different actions playing out, and I want to show you in Moho what an action actually is, because it could be a walk cycle, it could be a run cycle, it could be a blink, it could be something that you want to do to save time that you probably is an animation that you'll be using over and over again, or just a cool animation that you want to save to be used in future projects. So I'm just going to single out this guy here, and we're just going to focus on him. So he's got his walk cycle, and as far as where the actions are in Moho, they're in your actions panel. And to access that, you're going to go to your window, and then you're going to go to actions to check on your actions. That'll have like a floating panel. And then if you want it docked, you can just go to docking and then select your action. So I'll just kind of scrub through this because I know the playback might be a little bit choppy. But so I have a throw action that I created and saved, a walk action. And actually, this is a good example of modifying an action. So I have this standard walk that I started out with, but then I was like, okay, what if I wanted to keep that walk, but what if I created another walk and I added some more shoulder swing and some hip motion there? I already had my keyframes, and then it just gave me a chance to create a new action, just make a modification and then save that. So I already kind of have like my library of actions right here. And then I have a falling action, and then a walk cycle with like a mopey action. So I think you kind of get the idea to where you could just build whatever you want. And you can, I think you can go overkill with actions. Like it's just up to your judgment of to what you think would be best to create an action for. Because the whole idea is to save time and just help you from having to recreate certain animations over and over again. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about what an action is. Now I want to show you how you would make an action. So I have this character. I'll be using this character quite a bit because it's pretty simple. So I have this walk cycle action here, or sorry, animation, and we want to make it into an action. So how would I do that? So in that actions panel, I'm going to go up to new action, and I'm going to click on the new action button, and that's going to create an action. Now, if you're familiar with rigging, what I'll show you here is if I accidentally have a bone selected and I click on the new action button, you can see it's going to name the action the name of the bone. This is a smart bone action. So this is an action, but it's not the action that I want. I want to have an action for the animation itself. So I want to make sure that I don't have any of the bones selected. So when I go to create a new action, it'll let me create an animation action. And then as far as naming, it's best to name it to whatever makes the most sense for you. So it's easily recognizable. So for me, I'll give him like a name. So I'll call this guy Dave. And then I'll have underscore and then standard walk. Again, you can name this however you want. It's just whatever makes the most sense to you. Because let's say you have your library of standard walks for different characters, but you label them all standard walk, and maybe the characters walk a little bit different for each character and they're all in the same scene. Well, it'll be kind of hard to tell when you're trying to import your actions for these different characters. If it's all labeled standard walk, how would you know which character it belongs to? So just keep that in mind as far as organizing your actions. Okay, so once I create an action, I'm going to be in my action timeline. So this is separate from my main timeline. As you can see here, it's gray and I have my keyframes. But in my action timeline, which is pink, it doesn't have any keyframes. So this lets me know that I'm in my action. You can see here that I have this little red arrow too, letting me know. So how do I import this action, how do I import the animation from my main timeline into my action? Well, there's pretty much one way that you do it. We're just going to be copying and pasting the keyframes. So to do that, there's two ways you can do it. I can either, with this action still selected, so my pink timeline is still highlighted there, I can left click once and then right click on the main line to insert a copy, or I can come up here to my insert copy button. So you can do either one. I'm just going to insert the copy there. And if I play this out, there we go. Now I have this animation from my main timeline saved into my action. If you wanted to, I don't really do this. I usually do all of my testing for my animation and getting the timing and the spacing and the poses right. But you can build your actions into a new action. So if I wanted to create a new action, I could just start animating here and then name it what I want. So you could approach it multiple different ways. Okay, so now we're gonna start the process of building the action library. So to do that, you're just going to right click and you're gonna hit export. And what this is gonna do, it's gonna export this action from Moho onto my computer locally. And I can then send this to, let's say I'm working in an animation studio and I can send it to my coworker to start using in their animation. Or if I'm doing something episodic and I want to put it into another episode, I can then have my library of actions that I can import this action into. So it's going to give you an option to save to a custom folder. I actually don't have anything saved in a content folder. I just create my own folders. I might need to learn how to use the content folder. There might be something good to that because I know it attaches back to the library. I just never got in the habit of using it. So anyway, I'm going to just import it into a folder that I have called actions. And as you can see here, it has the same naming and then .moho action. That's just the file name or the file type that Moho uses. I'll go ahead and hit save. So right now I have this animation in my main timeline. I have it in my action timeline, and I also have it in my on my local computer. And like I said, then from here I can email it, I can upload it to Dropbox, that action, and then someone else can import it in. So let's pretend I'm that animation coworker, and I'm starting on a fresh project here. So this character is, and that's one thing to keep in mind, is when you're importing and exporting actions, it's best to do it for the character that it's created for. So this is like a shared rig. We're working with the same character. This is Dave that we're using in all our episodes, and I'm going to import an action now that was sent to me for this Dave character. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import, and Dave's just the name of this character that I gave. It's actually just simple rig. But so this is something I was actually kind of stressing out a little bit prior while I was preparing for this webinar, is I wanted to show you how to build a library of actions, but I couldn't get the import feature to work. And as you can see here, when I just went to import this, and hopefully I didn't go too fast, but what I did is I right clicked and I hit import, and then I selected the action. But what you can see here is that it's just doing it for one of the parts of the body. So in this case, it's just his arms. So if I select his arm, you can see I have keyframes for that arm, but I don't have keyframes for the other parts of his body. So I was kind of stressing out about that, but I got this feature to work because it worked in earlier versions of Moho for me. It just wasn't working for some reason with this. So what I ended up doing, and I look like I just deleted his target bone. There we go. Let's make sure we don't delete that. So what I end up doing is you could select one of the bones of the character, or in this case, I just select all of them just to make sure that I am able to import the action safely. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import the action. And now when I go into the action itself, I can see that all my keys are there. So everything is functioning as it should. So that's really good. So now, how do I get my action from my panel into my main timeline? Because that's the whole point. So maybe let's pretend that I already have keyframes down and I want to start my walk cycle on frame 73 here. So you can do this in one of two ways as far as putting your action into the main timeline. With the main timeline currently active, I can right click the action and I can either insert a reference or insert a copy. So let's go ahead and let's do the insert a copy first. Okay, so this is something that I set up, but I want to show how we can create a or the importance, I guess. If I send out an action and it has an error in it, I want to make sure I correct that error, because right now I have a cycle error, which means that when I play this out, my cycle's broken. It doesn't work because it's going back. It's an absolute cycle that's cycling back to frame 2. And because I want to place the cycle anywhere that I don't want it to constantly go back to frame 2. I want it to be relative to where the whole set of keyframes are moving. So what I would do to fix this, I would just set this to relative, and then I would set it back so that it starts after the first frame. And then when I go to move this, you can see that it moves them all together instead of an absolute value. So right off the bat, I didn't do QA, quality assurance. I don't know if it's quality assurance, but I didn't check to see, I should see if the cycle is actually working before I send it to other people. So let's say I caught my mistake and I want to update this. Probably the best thing to do is, because as far as like on the coding side of Moho, I know that there's usually like metadata and things like that as far as how things are saved inside of Moho that I don't see it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to insert the copy again, and I'm going to make my adjustment here in the main timeline. And what I was trying to describe about that is if I was just going to make the change and then export it and then just call it the saved name, I don't know if that's going to create any internal issues with Moho, because I don't know how it actually saves out files on the coding side of things. So just to be safe, I'm just going to create a completely new action with this fixed action here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to call it Dave_standard walk. And then to let my team know, or to let myself know that this is an updated version, I'm going to call this version 2. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, make sure that that's highlighted there, and then I'm going to insert a copy of those keyframes. So there we go. So now I have my old broken one, and then I have this updated one. So I'm going to send that one out. So I'm going to export that to the team. Let's pretend that this is being uploaded to Dropbox or something. So there we go. We have the latest version. So I'm going to delete the broken one from my panel there. And again, the reason why I would do that is because I could easily just take and fix those keyframes, but I don't want to have like that exported action out there that now maybe 15 other animators are using, but it's all broken on their computers. It would make the most sense just to say, hey, here's the fixed one, or better yet, just send out the proper one to begin with. Because that's the thing, I would imagine, and I don't work in an animation studio, but I would imagine if I'm sending this out to be used on other projects or just even my own projects, that I would want, like as far as like a walk cycle, I would want to continually be updating a walk cycle to maybe, I don't know, just make it work better. Like the first walk cycle, the first version, you know, it usually isn't that great. And then you're constantly updating, and as you get better with animation, you're just improving. So you would create that updated action. Okay, I think I went on a little longer than I wanted to about that part of it. But okay, so I have now the walk cycle in my animation, and I did that by inserting the keyframes. But let's say I want to do the other way to insert my action into the main timeline, and that's with the reference. Now, the cool thing about a reference is I can update the action itself. So let's say the action, I want to have them walk further down on the down positions and up on the up positions. And I'm just going to copy and paste those keyframes. Because it's a reference, because I'm referencing this onto my main timeline, it's going to automatically update now. So that's the difference between the insert copy and insert reference. For me personally, I kind of do insert copy the most because a lot of times I want to change the timing or move my keys around. And if I'm doing it with a reference, I'd always have to be doing it here. And it's easier for me to just kind of see it with the rest of the animation. So that's just something that's just, I guess, preference as to what you'd want to do there. I'm gonna get a drink real quick. Sorry, my throat is dry. Okay, awesome. So now the next part of this is sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. I actually kind of lost my spot a little bit. Okay, so now we have okay, so let's pretend that I'm just gonna do this really quick for time's sake. So I just updated this walk cycle. Let's pretend that I want to use this walk cycle. So I'm just gonna rename it to Goofy. Sorry. So it'd be Dave Goofy walk cycle. Okay. So this is just an example as if I had modified this walk cycle. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna bring it to frame 1 here. Okay. And then I'm gonna import the standard walk cycle because I want to show you that you can now, how you can blend your two actions together. And this is a really simple example. We'll go into a little bit more of a complex example in a little bit here. But I'm gonna go ahead now and just import my other walk cycle into the animation here. And I'm gonna remove, I don't know if I said this, but it creates keyframes for frame 0. And these tend to get in the way. The keyframes, anytime there's a keyframe, it actually can stop a walk cycle. But if I'm overlapping my keyframes, I know I'm not explaining this good, but I don't want these keyframes here. They're not supposed to be there, is basically what I'm trying to say. Okay, so if I'm trying to create this walk cycle to flow into one another, the thing that will make the most sense is, okay, he has his front leg forward there, and he's got that leg there. So the animation should continue into itself. So it's going to go from bouncing to standard. And then I can have it going bouncing again, because I could just import these actions wherever I want. Again, think of it like an eye blink. You're just importing the set of animation over and over into your timeline where it's needed. And one thing that I want to show here is I think this is why you want to delete out those frame 0 keys, is because it tends to create this issue here where your character goes back into its 0 keyframe or 0 frame position. So I don't want to say that's a bug or anything, but I don't think you want to have those keyframes there. So it's best to delete those out, or else you'll get that. Okay, so one thing that I want to show you now is, let's say we want to build our own action now. So we used a little bit of like presets and some kind of minor examples, but let's do something like, okay, I want to have this character start from a standing position, and then he goes into this walk, because right now it's just the walk cycle, but now I want to build an action of him starting from like a stopped position and then going into this walk. So he might start off walking a little bit slow, and then he's going to walk into this speed here. So how would I do that? So I'm going to copy my position that I want it to be in onto frame 1 and frame 2. And this is an important part, and you'll see a little bit later in an example that I'll show. This is an important part of why you want to make sure you're always keeping in mind the positioning of your actions, because if you're wanting your actions to blend together, it's very important that the positions are really close together, so that the in-betweening process from getting from one action to the other, kind of like I was showing here in this example. So I have to create these in-betweens to get from, okay, how do I get from here to a throw? Because I have to stop the cycle. It's really important to make sure that when you're creating these actions that they're close in position. So that's what I'm going to do here. So to create that standing position, I'm just going, like I said, I'm just going to copy and paste that keyframe. I'm going to move his leg over, and I'll kind of do this quick because I want to make sure that I stay on time here. And you could really work in your positions however you want, like to get a position, a pose rather is what I'm trying to say, to try to get your pose where you want it to be. And then let's see, so like here for his arms, when he actually starts walking, I actually don't want him to swing his arms out too terribly far there. So maybe something like that, okay? And then because Moho is a tweening software, like it creates the in-betweens for you, I'm just gonna kind of use that to my advantage. So I'm gonna use this as the passing position, but I'll pick his leg up a little bit more. Okay. And now I'm just gonna drag out my keyframes so that, oh, we got some breaking leg going with the target bones. To fix that, I don't actually go to the frame where the breaking's happening. I just go to the frame closest because I think it just needs a key. And I just use my transform bones tool and I select that ankle and I just fix that by adding a key there. Okay. And then because this is going into this cycle here, and all I want to do is I just want to slow down this walk till it gets to this walk. So it kind of looks like he's starting from like a slowing down position and gaining speed going into this walk. I'm just going to copy these keyframes. And again, I'm doing this a little fast, so I hope I'm explaining everything good as I go, because there's other things that I want to I want to be able to cover. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to smooth that out. Okay, so now we got this. Okay, so he's taken a few steps. I want to have him kind of take a few steps in because, like I said, I want him to kind of go slow and then speed up into the actual walk cycle. Okay, so we got some more breaking legs. Let's fix that. Let's see. So I just create my keyframe there. Oh man, it wasn't breaking this bad when I was testing. Ah, okay, so we got a few more. There's another one there. And all I'm doing, like I said, is I'm just creating the keyframes because I think the issue is when I created my target bones, I created them with perfectly straight legs. So Moho, once I start moving his legs around, it's like, whoa, okay, which way do you want the leg to be going? And that's where I kind of need to help it. Okay, cool. So I think that's good. So now what I'll do is I'm just going to label these keys. I'm going to put them in a pink color or just a different color here. So I know that this is the action that I want to save for him starting out this walk. And then, like I said, if I wanted to blend the two together now, I have my start and then the actual walk itself. See how the two blend together nicely because I was being mindful of where the position is so that when I blend the two actions together, they look good. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that out because all I was working on is this start of this walk here. And you can spend a lot more time to fix the in-betweens and stuff, but I'm just going to use what I have right now, and I'm going to create a new action. And again, one thing to keep in mind is to make sure you're on the layer that has the keyframes. When you're importing and exporting an action with bones, it's not going to import from what I know is it's not going to import the nested layers. So let's say I have his shirt moving up and down. I have point animation on different parts of this body. When I import and export an action, it's only doing the top level. So in this case, it's just my bones. So that's something to keep in mind. But if I'm doing an action within Moho and I'm just saving it in Moho, I'm not importing or exporting, it will save all of my other layers that have all the other animations on them as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. So if I go to now import, or not import, sorry, if I go to create the action, and I'll just call this Dave, and then I'll call this, let's see, I'll call this start, because he's starting his walk, and then it's going into the standard walk. Okay, so I'll go ahead and I'll hit OK there. And I'm going to import, just like what we did, I'm going to insert those copies of those keyframes into the action there. All right, so now we got we have a library that we're starting to build. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to export this start action here. And I really hope this is all making sense, because nerves, that kind of get to you. Okay, so now this is the hopefully a realistic example that I can give. Let's say you're working with your animation team and you were assigned this scene here. And it's one that you've already seen quite a bit, but hopefully this helps to cement this whole understanding of actions and how they can be used. So let's say this is the scene that you were assigned, and you send this to your animation lead or your supervisor, and they're taking a look at it and they're like, okay, yeah, that looks good, but I don't like that walk cycle. That walk cycle looks a little off. I think it can be improved. And maybe they suggest that, hey, why don't you use the walk cycle from episode 2, or this other shot that we did, that this animator did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this action, because now I want to show you how I can blend in my actions. Oh, and let's say the other instruction too is that, hey, rather than just starting this walk, like that just doesn't make sense, let's have them start from a stop position and then walking. And you now know, okay, cool, I have actions for that. I can just import my actions. So let's do that. So again, I want to make sure that I have all my bones selected when I go to import my actions, and I'm going to import my standard walk and then my starting walk. So now I have a better version of my walk cycle, better than the one that I had currently. And then I have my standard walk. So I'm just going through and just making sure that everything is working there. Okay, so that's working good. All right, now the thing is, this isn't a very complex animation, but let's say I have a lot of keyframes, and now I need to create some space so I can add all of my keyframes in, because I know that this alone plus this is going to put me somewhere around here in this area, and I don't want to overlap my keyframes when I start importing my actions. So how do I move all of my keyframes for my home document? I don't want to use my sequencer, because when I use my sequencer, it's actually moving frame 0 along with everything else. And I can't remember who it was, but there was a member on the Lost Marble forum that highlighted this feature that I didn't even know about in Moho, and that's rescale keyframes. And this is something I use a lot now to move keyframes around when I have multiple keyframes in nested layers and in other layers and things like that outside of my rig. So what you'll do first is you'll click rescale entire document, and what I forgot to do is find out where the beginning of that chunk of keyframes is that I want to move. So it's frame 65. So I'm going to go to rescale keyframes, and I'm going to go to frame 65, and the animation ends at 179. Just be mindful of where your other animations are ending on any of the other layers if you have multiple layers with the animations. I know that the ending for all of them right now, though, is at 179. And then I'm just going to, let's say I'll move this to 165. I think that'll give me enough space. And so now the new end frame, instead of, because this is rescale, I don't want to rescale all of my keyframes. I just want to move them all as a chunk to somewhere else in the timeline. So I'm just going to move this up 100 frames. Okay, so you can see that it moved all of those frames together there. And now I have plenty of room to insert my actions and to start working with what I got. Okay, so to do that, again, what I recommend doing, just because right now there seems to be, again, I don't want to call it a bug because I don't know what it is. It could just be on my end, but it's inserting it's inserting my 0 keyframe frames. And when I drag that over to frame 0, it creates that T-pose on like frame 2 or 3. So I'm just going to delete those out. And I'm going to drag those to frame 1. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that's working. Cool, so that's working good. And now I want to also bring in my standard walk. So I'm going to bring that in to my animation now. Just going to do insert copy, same thing. Okay, and so I know because we just did it with this example here, I know that these two actions, they blend together. But you might, depending on however you have these set up, like I said, you might have to fix it with your in-betweens. But for me, this works perfectly. So now we're right on track as far as doing what our animation supervisor is requesting, which is to create this start walk cycle. And we're actually saving a lot of time right now doing this. Okay, so now the next thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that wherever this cycle ends blends nicely as close as I can into this next position. And you can see already it's jumping. And the reason why it's jumping, and I wanted to show this example, is because I wasn't being mindful of when I was creating this animation, my other animation, I wasn't being mindful of where my actions were. And that will happen because when you're creating your bone animations, it's actually recording the position of those bones. So I had my bones positioned here and I was creating the animation there. And then for the action, it's just that slight difference there that you can see. There's a little bit of a jump. So there's a way that I could fix that. There's actually two ways. I'm going to show you kind of like a band-aid method, but probably another method would just be to import the rig with this animation on it and then just move it over this other rig so that there's less of a jump there, and then just switch the visibility of those two rigs on and off so that it kind of smoothly blends into another. But because I need to move this character close to the same position as this as the character that's already on here, but it's all using the same rig, I'm going to use a transform layer, I guess you could call Band-Aid, to get that to work. But the first thing that I need to do is I just need to make sure that I can get this cycle to work smoothly. So I think if I do, I'm going to fix his arm because I think his arm kind of came out a little bit there. Oops, and it's using copy previous keyframe. So I'll make that smooth. So, so I want that position for where the walk cycle ends. So I think that will be right around here. Yeah, I think that'll work. Let's actually do a few frames before. So right about there. Okay, so hopefully this part makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense once I start bringing it together. But I have this position where I want to move all these keys, which is 145, and I have the existing position, which is 165. Okay, so I'm going to use my rescale to move all those keys back because now I'm trying to blend the two animations together with my action. Okay, so I think it was 165. Yeah, so 165. And then I wanted to move it to 145. Okay, and then I want to move, again, that whole chunk of keyframes. I want that to be, I know it's 20, but my brain's freezing up. So I think this is 259. Okay, so I'm just moving all that whole chunk 20 frames forward. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And let's see how this looks. So now we have that animation of him starting out. Cool. Okay, so other than, oh, that's a pretty big jump. Let me move this back just a little bit more. Probably right there. So I'm going to move these chunk of keyframes back just a little bit. So just a little bit of trial and error here. So this is, I have at 145 and I think I said 147. Oops, 145 to 147. So that's adding 3, so that's 62. I can do math, 262. Okay. Okay, that's a little bit better. I'm not looking at necessarily the position, the whole jumping will fix. I'm just looking at his pose because that's the part I want to get closest. Okay, so to fix the jumping part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a step keyframe to hold the position of the layer of where it is currently. Because if I want to try to match the position of the action before using the transform layer, it's just going to continually be moving the rest of the keyframes forward because it's all the same layer, it's all the same rig. So I'm going to use my onion skins to kind of help me out here. And I apologize if this part's not as clear, but I'm using onion skins to kind of help me to move my character into the correct position here. So now I'm just moving the whole layer because all I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get this as smooth as possible. And it's not that great. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have too much time to fix this, but I just want to get that as close as possible using those two keyframes. And I'm using step because I'm going to use step down here as well. Or you know what? I think you could just use smooth, but yeah, I'll just use step keyframes. And then I'm going to take this position of my layer and I'm going to paste it on frame 1, because right now this is a linear on frame 0, so it's going to be moving. You can see it kind of moves the whole layer over. But if I just go ahead and I hit paste, it's gonna keep that position roughly in the same spot there. Okay, so now, sorry, it's freezing up a little bit here. So now I have my action. I just need to kind of fix my in-betweens a little bit, and I'll do the best that I can live here. It probably won't be the best looking thing, but I have my action. Okay, so I probably don't want to do that here. Let's do, I'm gonna copy, oh man, I'm kind of forgetting how I would do this. It's kind of goofy. This is a little bit more of a rougher transition than what I had tested leading up to the webinar. But let's see if we could fix this. Okay, so I don't want to copy all the keyframes. So what I want to do is I want to look at, okay, what's jumping the most? So let's at least fix those parts. I'm gonna use my transform bone tool. Okay, so it's definitely the arms, because all I'm doing is it's like I'm just adding a keyframe between the blend of those two animations. It's definitely the legs. So the legs, when he goes to step, this leg actually goes back further. So let's just kind of put it not quite in the exact same position, because I don't want to repeat the same frame twice, but I just want to get it to kind of smooth a little bit, transition a little bit more smoothly. So I can see that like his shoulder drops. So there's a ton of different things that I could start kind of in betweening to fix. And yeah, so I think you could take a lot of time doing this, which I don't have. But that looks pretty good. I think the other reason why this might look a little off, let's say, and I know probably this wouldn't be a situation, but let's say the request from my animation supervisor was, hey, we need the animation on on ones. Why do you have it on, or yeah, why do you have it on twos? So let's say that's the other thing, because that's actually what's going on here. I have this on ones and these on twos, so I actually need to fix that. So I'm going to select all of my keys, and I'm just going to go to interval and then switch this to ones. So hopefully this looks a little bit smoother. Playing that out. Okay, so there, yeah, like I said, there is a bit of a jump there, like his arm kind of bends down a little bit, but I think you got the idea. You would just have to go in and then just do the in-betweening yourself. But the really cool thing about this, and I hope that this explains kind of the why to use an action as a kind of an important part, is it saved me time. Let's say I really worked hard on these walk cycles, or it's even more of a more advanced animation. But I could have saved myself about 45 minutes to an hour worth of time just manually creating these keyframes versus importing a walk cycle and a start walk cycle, start action to a walk cycle that I know already works into an existing project. And then like I just showed you, you can move your keyframes around and you can import that action and it works. Okay, it looks like I have 1 minute here. Dang. This is one part that I wanted to show that I thought would be really cool. But as far as
Looks awesome.
as far as trying to overcome the part of when you import an action and you don't have all of the keyframes from all of the nested layers importing, it's just the top level. What I wanted to show here is I have a master project that I built all of my actions for this character into. So right now it's just 2 actions and it's my lip sync. And the reason why I built it into my master project is because this is where I'm going to do all of my editing, my rig updates and things like that. Because when I go to update them in the projects that I imported by reference, when I go to update those projects to match the master project, I'm probably not explaining this well, it's going to update all of the changes from the main rig. So like if I change the color, or okay, not the color, but maybe if I changed his mouth, maybe I want to make it a little bit wider. Because it's on a switch layer, go ahead and move that up. I'll go ahead and I'll save this. Because it's on a switch layer, it's automatically going to update here once I update it. So if I go to update layer reference, misplaced vectors, you can see that it updates there as well. But what's really cool is my actions also carry over. So I could build all my actions here to where I want to do all of my testing. And then once I update my references, I can update the actions as well once those update. And it'll carry over all of the animation information. So if I have multiple nested layers of animation, that should carry over. Sometimes you might, before you go to update, just delete the action completely and then update the reference, and then that'll bring back the action if you're making any changes to the actions themselves. Yeah. So it looks like I'm kind of running out of time here. But I guess the last one here is I was going to show you how you can just kind of cement all the information here and just show you how you can create an action for point animation. And then from there, you can kind of go crazy. And instead of just one bug, you can have multiple flying bugs with your same action being used. But yeah, that looks like that's all the time that I have. But yeah, I just want to thank you again for letting me to show you kind of my workflow. This is something I'm kind of learning and I'm using as I go. But hopefully this has been helpful. And yeah, well, thanks, Mario. We'll turn it back over to
Well,
you.
thank you so much, McCoy. It's been a really insightful webinar. So thank you so much. Also, we want to thank all of you who are watching us live from different parts of the world, just like Alan from Florida, Deva Giri from Australia, Jovan from Serbia, Sarah Canada, Limbo from Mexico, Ana Belén from Spain. So thank you all. Yeah, we have some questions. For example, Sarah has two questions. If I create and save an action, this means I can attach it to any rig character and it will just work. The second one is, does the character need to have an exact number of joints that are in the action to work to correct?
Yeah, great questions. Okay, so for the first question, I personally haven't gotten this to work 100% of the time. There is an option in Moho when you want to import an action into, this is one thing to keep in mind when it comes to your rigs, you want to have them very similar to one another at least. So even if it is a different character, you want to at least make sure that the bone structure is the same, because all that Moho's using is keyframes to move your bones around. And if the bones don't match and you're trying to make it work for a rig that doesn't match, then it won't work. I haven't tested this much out because I haven't had the best of results. But when you go to import a rig, imported action into another rig that it doesn't match, there is an option to convert to relative. So it'll take the relative bone structure and Moho will try to make that action work. But like I said, it doesn't work 100% of the time. So you'll just have to test it yourself, but it's the convert to relative. And yeah, you can reference the documentation for more information on that. I think it goes into pretty good explanation. And as far as the other question,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Yes, the second question was, does the character need to have the exact number of joints that are in the action to work correctly?
So do you think that's kind of going off of the first question as far as like if is that the same person asking the question, Mario?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yep, exactly. So you would want to have, like I said, a similar bone structure. So as far as the joints, yes, you would want to make sure that it's as close as possible for if it's like a male and a female rig, and maybe they're different sizes, but you at least want to make sure that the bone structure is the same. Yes.
Okay, so we have greetings from Timothy. Hey, Mako, it was great watching you again. I'm one of your original followers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sarah says, yes, it's clear. Thank you so much. Another question from Renee. Will actions be useful for scrolling background if you plan to make the background go on several seconds?
Yeah. I mean, actions work with anything that has an animation. So I would say, yeah, I say you could do that. So something, okay, that's actually a good question. Because like, let's say it is maybe like a camera and well, I don't know. I'm hoping I understand the question correctly. But anything that has an animation that has keys, you should be able to create an action for that. So yes, if you have a scrolling background, like if this was just, let's pretend that this was the background and I had my key here and my key here and I'm still on step. So let me move that to linear. And this is your animation, but you have all of your things. You can save that to your scrolling background. Because all you're doing is all that an action is basically saving your keyframes or copying and pasting your keyframes from your main timeline into something that you can reuse, which is the action itself. So you could insert those copies and yeah, so you'd be able to save that. Hopefully that answers the question correctly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a lot of question about this webinar. Yes, it's been recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So please subscribe to receive notifications once the video is available. Another question from Jameson. Let me find it here. Hello, Mario and McCoy. Are there any special considerations for the rig to make action like this is reusable? What happens if the bones in the reusable action don't perfectly match the rig? For example, a reusable action such as this imported on a three-legged man.
Yeah,
That was
yeah, that
pretty
kind of goes back to
specific.
the yeah, so that does go back to the first question. So yeah, you want to make sure it's as close as possible. So if you have like another leg or another arm, it won't work because it's only going based off of what those bones were the bones that were keyframed and what that action, oh man, I'm explaining this terribly, but the keyframed bones. So if you added additional bones and they're not part of that original keyframe bones of the action, Moho won't know what to do with that third leg or other arm joint or something like that. I will say there is a tutorial. I think it was done by Chad Troftgruben at the time for when this feature was first released, which was, I want to say it was Anime Studio 11. 0.5 or something like that. But yeah, it's gonna be it'll be in there. It's an import export action tutorial, and then he goes into like the convert to relative and how it works.
Okay. Here's a question from Jack Baker. I don't know if it's related to actions, but he says, I'm new to the animation. Will it be possible to detach a bone from a skeleton, or will you have to make a separate model rig? Example, like making a part of the body detached like a Lego figure while animating. I think that's an IKFK question.
Yeah, that yeah. So I mean, yeah, if I understand it correctly as well. So let me say that oh man, my keys. So let's say that this character, I'm just gonna kind of go frame by frame here. If I understand the question correctly, as far as the bone detaching, uh, like you could move out the transform bone. So whatever that character is rigged to, like let's say this guy lost his head and then it kind of rolls away from him. I'm not going to be able to animate that because my bone structure is not set up to do that. But yeah, you can detach in that way. If you're wanting to unparent something, you can, let's see if I remember how to do this. when you get to the parenting stage of rigging, parenting is actually animatable. So I can unparent something. So I can pick this character up now and his head's detached. I'm trying to think of another example of that. Mario, you're saying IKFK, and I think that would kind of be the first example that I mentioned. I hope. I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm missing here, but yeah, because if you're like, let's say there's two characters and you want the other character, he's like, oh, hey, that's my head. What are you doing? And then let's see if I could do this really quick. This is probably not going to work out because I'm just duplicating. But let's go to clear animation from layer. Yes. Okay, so let's say this character over here, he doesn't have a head. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that really quick. Oh, you know what? They would have to be in the same bone structure. I forgot about that. Shoot. So yeah, so you can unparent and reparent bones on your main timeline. That is an animatable feature, just like I was showing there. In order for this to work so that he puts it on his head, like I was gonna have his head deleted off there, and then have him put it on, they'd have to be in the same bone rigging structure to be able to parent that to the new character. So hopefully that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Thank you so much,
Yep.
McCoy. Another question is from Guido. Can you share the simple rig and actions you used in the example?
Share like just go.
Yeah, show
Hopefully
again,
kind
probably.
of over it again. Say that again. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, probably just share the original rig and actions you made for this webinar. Just probably just refresh what you have been explaining this in this session.
Yeah. So yeah, so I just have like these characters. They just have their actions. And if I go into any one of these characters, because they all share the same actions, and I just double click on the action, it'll show the action itself. Something, if I'm understanding correctly, I actually have this on my website, this particular character, with different actions already built in, and it's just for example's sake. It's not like something that's going to be amazing to bring into your own projects, but I do have that on my website, that you can take a look at it as well, to see these different rigs. So if I understand like the sharing part, yeah, it is downloadable from my website.
Awesome. And we're running out of time, unfortunately. But is there any tip or suggestion, McCoy, that you would like to share with our Moho users about actions?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to actions, the thing is, it's just whatever makes the most sense to you. Because the whole title of the webinar is fast and powerful animations. It's a powerful feature in itself. Again, like I just kind of started using it on different projects that I'm working on, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I get one action to blend into the other? And it's just in betweening. You just got to do the in betweens correctly. But yeah, I would say it's up to your judgment. You could definitely overdo actions, but you would just do it where you think it would work best. And yeah, I think it could be just a huge time-saving feature, and it allows you to save and even animations that you like. Like, okay, I don't want to use this animation here in this particular animation, so maybe you're just doing testing, you're just creating different walk cycles, and you want to save those. It gives you an option to use those at a different time in different projects, or even within the same project. So it's just a really cool and valuable feature, I think, that Moho has, that I want to take advantage of more and learn more about. But yeah, this is just all I know so far about this feature and how you could use it.
So with those wise words, we are about to finish our webinar. So thank you so much, McCoy, and thank you all who joined us.
Thank you.
So one last bit of information, guys. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay. So with Moho, the future is 2D. Moho is a powerful 2D animation software that combines the most powerful animation technology with state-of-the-art professional animation tools. Draw, rig, and animate easily. You can create your characters directly in Moho with its vector tools optimized for animation, or import images or Photoshop files, keeping the link and layer structure. For more information, visit mohoanimation.com. Also, any other information, just visit us in our website mohoanimation.com, and also follow us in our social media channels to stay tuned with the latest informations, references, and inspiration animations from all of you from the community. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And also, for more information about McCoy, don't forget to follow him on his socials on Instagram, McCoy_Buck, also the same on YouTube, and visit his store on store.mccoybuck.com. So with that, once again, thank you so much, McCoy.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
And thank you all who join us live, and please stay tuned for our next presentation. Well, thank you so much. Bye bye.